Ambassador Tresh had survived 3 wars, 2 political coups, and a near-fatal encounter with a Xenarian plasma beast. None of that had prepared him for humans.
"Hold my beer," said Marcus Webb, the human security consultant, extending a brown glass bottle toward Tresh's closest appendage.
Tresh's translator chip immediately flagged the phrase.
According to the expanding human idiom database, a document that had grown to over 40,000 entries in just 2 years, this particular combination of words was classified as threat level, Omega. "No," Tresh said, all 4 of his hands raised in a gesture of universal refusal.
"Absolutely not. Whatever you're planning, cease immediately."
Marcus grinned, that peculiar baring of teeth that humans insisted meant friendliness but which every other species recognized as a predator's warning.
"Come on, Ambassador. The KRYLL boarding party has us pinned down. Someone's gotta do something." "Yes, we wait for reinforcements like civilized beings," Tresh hissed. "We do not do something in the manner humans typically do something." The space station shuddered as another blast hit the outer shields. Through the viewport, Tresh could see the KRYLL warship, its weapons arrays glowing with malevolent energy. The KRYLL were notorious pirates, their exoskeletons nearly impervious to standard weapons. They had breached Outpost 7's defenses in under an hour, something that should have been impossible. But then again, Tresh reflected bitterly, humans had taught the galaxy that impossible was just a suggestion. "Look," Marcus said, setting his beer down on a console when Tresh refused to take it. "I've been running numbers. The station's waste recycling system connects to the docking bay where their ship is attached. If I can crawl through the service tunnels, bypass the security locks, and reverse the flow, I can flood their ship with." "That is a toxic waste system," Tresh interrupted. "The temperature in those tunnels exceeds 300 degrees. The pressure would crush any being. The radiation alone." "Yeah, it's not great," Marcus admitted. "But here's the thing. I grew up in Australia." Tresh's translator struggled with this statement, eventually offering, "a landmass on Earth known for containing the highest concentration of deadly organisms per square kilometer in known space." "Exactly," Marcus said cheerfully. "I've been stung by jellyfish that can stop your heart, bitten by spiders the size of dinner plates, and once I wrestled a crocodile on a dare." "This is just Tuesday for me." "This is suicide," Tresh corrected. "Nah, suicide is staying here while those KRYLL bugs cut through the blast door. This is just creative problem solving." Before Tresh could protest further, Marcus had stripped off his jacket and was climbing into a ventilation shaft. "Time me. I'm gonna try to beat my personal record." "Record for what?" Tresh shouted after him. "Doing stupid things and surviving," came the echoing reply. Tresh stood paralyzed for exactly 3 seconds before his survival instincts kicked in. He activated his emergency communicator. "This is Ambassador Tresh to all personnel. Evacuate Sector 9 immediately. The human has entered a waste tunnel. I repeat, the human is doing something. This is not a drill." Throughout the station, alarms began blaring, not the KRYLL invasion alarms, but the newer ones. The Human Activity Warning System had been installed after the incident with the cargo bay and the improvised rocket fuel, as it was now officially recorded. Junior Officer SHVAC, a young Paltharian, arrived at Tresh's side. "Sir, why are we evacuating? Shouldn't we be fortifying this position against the KRYLL?" "Child," Tresh said wearily, "I have learned many things in my decades of diplomatic service. The most important is this. When a human says hold my beer, the blast radius is unpredictable." A rumbling sound began in the walls. Then a rushing, like a great wave building. Tresh grabbed SHVAC and dove behind a reinforced bulkhead just as the entire station shook. Through the viewport, they watched as the KRYLL warship suddenly lurched. Toxic green fluid began spraying from every seal and joint in their docking collar. The ship's exterior lights flickered wildly. Emergency escape pods launched in all directions, each filled with KRYLL warriors fleeing in disarray. Marcus emerged from a service hatch 15 minutes later, covered in substances Tresh didn't want to identify. He was still grinning.
Told you it would work, he said, retrieving his beer. Although I gotta say, that tunnel was hotter than I expected.
Lost some skin.
He held up his arms, which were bright red and blistering.
Nothing serious though.
Nothing serious, Tresh repeated faintly. You reversed a waste management system designed to process toxic materials for 3,000 occupants, crawled through superheated tunnels that should have melted your bones, and flooded an enemy warship with biohazardous materials. And you describe this as nothing serious.
Well, I didn't die, Marcus pointed out. So yeah, not serious. Serious would be if I'd had to do the thing with the reactor coolant. That was Plan B. There was a Plan B? HFY whispered in horror.
Always have a backup plan, Marcus said sagely. That's what my dad taught me before he tried to jump his motorcycle over our swimming pool.
Did he succeed? Tresh asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. Nope. Broke both legs and an arm. But he survived, and that's what counts. Webb family motto, if it doesn't kill you, it's character building. Tresh made a mental note to update the human behavior guidelines. Again.
They were now the longest diplomatic document in Galactic Council history, having surpassed the Treaty of Eternal Peace by 3,000 pages. Marcus, Tresh said carefully, on behalf of the Galactic Council and everyone
aboard this station, I thank you for your creative intervention. However, I must formally request that you never, ever do anything like that again.
Sure thing, Ambassador, Marcus said, taking a swig of his beer. Then he paused, looking at a readout on a nearby console.
Although, about that KRYLL warship. It's still attached to our docking port, and their reactor looks unstable. If it goes critical, it'll take out half the station. Can you stabilize it? HFY asked hopefully. Marcus studied the readings.
Then he set down his beer again. No, Tresh said immediately. I'd have to spacewalk over to their ship, probably while it's venting toxic waste, climb through their damaged hull, navigate to their reactor core, and manually override their safety systems before the whole thing goes supernova, Marcus mused.
Radiation will be pretty intense. Might need someone to hold the airlock open so I can get back before my suit's oxygen runs out. Absolutely not, Tresh said firmly. Could work though. I mean, I've done stupider things. That is not reassuring. Remember that time I told you about the jet ski and the typhoon? You are not helping your case. Marcus picked up his beer again and drained it. Well, someone's gotta do it. And like my granddad used to say, fortune favors the bold, and the bold are usually drunk. Your grandfather sounds like a dangerous individual, Tresh said. He was. Lived to 97. Got kicked out of 3 nursing homes for reckless behavior. Marcus headed toward the airlock. Anyway, I'll be back in 20. If I'm not, tell my sister she can have my vinyl collection. Marcus. Tresh called after him. Why? Why do humans do these things? Marcus paused at the airlock door, considering the question seriously for perhaps the first time in the conversation. You know that feeling when something needs doing, and everyone's standing around saying it's impossible? And then there's that voice in your head that says, yeah, but what if I tried anyway? That's basically our entire evolutionary history in a nutshell, Ambassador. We're the species that looked at the stars and said, I bet we could get up there. And then we did. That doesn't explain the recklessness, Tresh protested. Sure it does. If we'd stopped to calculate the risks, we'd still be in caves hiding from the leopards. Sometimes you just gotta hold your beer and see what happens. The airlock sealed behind him, and Tresh watched through the viewport as Marcus spacewalked toward the damaged KRYLL vessel. Around him, the station personnel had gathered, watching the humans' progress with a mixture of awe and terror that had become standard when humans were involved. Do you think he'll survive? HFY asked quietly. Tresh thought about every report he'd read, every incident he'd witnessed, every impossible situation humans had walked away from with nothing but minor injuries and incredible stories. Unfortunately, he said, yes. And then he'll do something even worse. But as he watched Marcus disappear into the hostile alien vessel,
Gresh felt something unexpected: hope. Because if humans could survive the unsurvivable and attempt the impossible, then perhaps the galaxy had a chance against the dangers lurking in the dark.
Even if it meant enduring thousands more human activity warning alarms. Even if it meant expanding the human idiom database to 1 million entries. Even if it meant, occasionally, having to hold their beer. 23 minutes later, Marcus returned, the KRYLL reactor safely shut down.
He was missing an eyebrow and his suit was scorched, but he was grinning.
So, he said, accepting a fresh beer from a traumatized-looking SHVEC, who's up for pizza? I'm starving. Nearly dying always makes me hungry.
Tresh updated his report to the Galactic Council, recommend increasing human hazard pay by 300%.
Also recommends sedatives for all non-human personnel assigned to human-adjacent duties. He paused, then added, recommend keeping humans on staff at all critical installations. They may be insane, but they get results.